Welcome to Health Talk. Thank you for joining us today. We have with us a special guest, Ms. Keesha Crosby. She's CEO and founder of Triguard Risk Solutions from Fairfax, Virginia. We met each other at the Diabetes Technology Society, and we were so excited about this topic of cybersecurity and medical devices, which is our topic today. And with us also is Laura Billard. She's applying to medical school, and she's interested in this topic as well. So, cybersecurity and devices, that's a big topic the last 2 years. Pacemakers, Dick Cheney and his defibrillator, everything. So, tell us, why should we be aware of this?
Well, a lot of medical devices are put in hospitals, put into the system, the infrastructure, and we really don't know if there are software weaknesses or known vulnerabilities or even patched or updated correctly.
That's true, because I'm an ophthalmologist and they lend us equipment all the time. There's robotics, there's new equipment that they want us to try out. And they hook it up, like there's a new device where we can do 3D surgery. And what happens, they lend it to the hospital for a 6-month free trial. Meanwhile, the vendor is getting all the information about me, all the operating surgeons, our preferences, and they're learning about other vendors who are interfacing with their device. So they're sucking out all this information. We don't even know that. So they're actually getting free data from us. So no wonder it's a free 6-month trial, because then they could get more bugs. But in addition, we could be losing patient data.
True.
And it's a problem. It's true. And we've mentioned off the show before we got on air today that there's a chief information officer, but not a chief information security officer.
Yes.
And other corporations have both.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about, you were very instrumental in doing the diabetes mobile app standards. Tell us a little bit about that, and you and your company, how you played a role in that.
So I met Dr. Kolnoff at MD Most
The Diabetes Technology Mobile Standards. Yes.
Conference, as well as MDIS, which is the Medical Device Information Security Conference. And he invited me because I wrote the 800-160 Appendix J software assurance controls, the first ever, invited me to participate in the mobile app standard. And there were other vendors there like Abbott and Intel and Samsung and
Apple and
Google. Yeah, everybody was there.
Yeah,
and so obviously I was the small company at the big table.
So it was very exciting, because now we know that if Apple and Samsung and Google are into it, it's in their head, and it's going to be in our head too, since they are so much into the consumer market. So, for example, I know that in 2011, an engineer patient who was diabetic hacked into his own insulin pump. So that told the company that there were problems. And since that time, it was hardware encoded, the password. And so that has changed. Tell us a little bit of how one can change passwords.
I mean, passwords are your access to whatever piece of equipment and a device or even network. So password protection is very, very important. And it's more than just like password protection. So they deployed that actual device to the market without properly vetting what are the known software weaknesses or that turned into vulnerabilities. So he just used it to get into his device. And we don't want patients to do that. We don't want them sending, fatal doses of insulin to themselves.
You were mentioning before, Laura is a millennial, and of course she knows all about Bluetooth and hacking and everything. So tell us, if you wore a device, an insulin pump, and you're in Starbucks, somebody could hack it. Tell us how that might happen.
Yes, so a way of getting into people's computers and devices is by setting up a phony Wi-Fi service. And you can just buy anything to create a hotspot at a local Starbucks or any area with a large population, like an airport or hotel lobby, and give it a very kind name like Starbucks free Wi-Fi or something like that, people will log into it because they think that it's the free Wi-Fi and they need Wi-Fi. So that's you're into all their devices.
Yes.
So some people disable their insulin pump when they're in a public place. Some of my software engineers who are my patients have told me that.
Wow.
They disable it when they're in a public place because they are aware of that. And public officials who are very famous and who are powerful have been known to ask the equipment, the medical device company, not to make their wireless a part of their pacemaker or accessible to anybody, including themselves. They don't want that capability.
Yes.
So it is a problem. Even people knew about it. In fact, George W. Bush created some of the laws that kind of got us interested in health information security. So this is a long time ago, and so people were aware of, the federal government was aware of it. Now, I know that there's also been devices such as pacemakers, Guidant in particular, was hacked in by Muddy Waters. They found a vulnerability, got Guidant to lose their share price. And they got their investors. Muddy Waters is a Wall Street firm that was based in England, and they had clients, so their clients made a lot of money. And Guidance subsequently sued them. The FDA a year later recalled 400,000 pacemakers in America. We have 65 pacemaker companies in America. And so not one pacemaker company was involved, but many companies were involved. And so that led to patching up something. So tell us about how patching up is not so good.
So patching up means that there are inherent vulnerabilities, well, in this case, weaknesses, that are waiting for a discovery, an error to occur, someone to hack into it and discover, hey, I can actually get onto this device and exploit that weakness, which makes it a vulnerability.
Now let's go through for our home audience. Weakness, vulnerability, what does that mean to a IT professional like yourself or a computer science professional like yourself? What does that mean? Tell us.
So weaknesses, in this case, software weaknesses, are bugs, defects, flaws. Those kind of things are weaknesses. And it's waiting for the introduction of an error to make it a vulnerability. And there's definitely a great difference. You see many products on the market, about 83% of the market covers the vulnerability space, but less than 20% covers the weakness space.
And your company works with that?
Yes, we're in the weakness market.
This is excellent.
Yes.
No wonder you're popular.
Thanks.
So let's say all the software developers, of course, try to prevent weaknesses, but as we know that by the time it goes through FDA, it could be a year to 2 years. And some people use open sourceware, free software, to create their startup company, startup company that makes a device. So during that time, you could have somebody in the dark web deciding, oh, well, let me just exploit this for fun and games or for money or torture people or just for control. And so tell us about how that works.
So one of the best examples I can give for that is like the heartbleed bug. The heartbleed bug is when the character went from 16 to a larger space, so that you can now monitor it. In secure SSL, it's a protocol.
What's SSL?
It stands for Secure Socket Layer. And so there was an open standard, open source SSL. Many vendors out there use it. Many service providers, many cloud people use it. So that heartbleed bug affected numerous of people out in the industry. And it was just one change to the header of the character size that allows them to exploit that vulnerability.
And then what happened as a consequence?
Well, you had OpenSSL. You can expand the character space. People can it's not secure at this point. So it's a one-to-one, so a secure socket layer connection. You now can ride that socket layer when you're thinking it was fully encrypted or VPN'd out.
And so it wasn't encrypted. They broke that encryption.
Well, they added a couple of more characters. When it was supposed to be 16, it expanded out beyond 16.
How long did it take them to find out and fix it?
A year from the time the guy
Right.
started the protocol. So the creator of the protocol went in and made a change, and he didn't know or wasn't aware that he introduced a weakness, which turned into a vulnerability into that protocol, and it caused heart bleed bug.
So that was devastating to many companies. And you were saying also that proprietary software, such as Abbott, the big companies, they're GE, they're locked in, so it's not an open source code, it's not
That's
free.
kind of closed source.
Right. So that means harder to hack in, not
Yeah.
impossible.
Not impossible, but to every GE, Abbott, or Philips, or any medical device, Siemens, they all constantly have patch updates, which are in the form of patches. And those are bug fixes or configuration error fixes, or
Because they're one step ahead of the hackers, in a way.
or the hackers might have told them about it.
And says, pay us $100,000 to keep quiet, and you fix it.
Or they may have done what they call a healthcare ISACA, which stands for Information Security AC. I can't remember. Sorry, can't remember the A and the C right now. But that's where they put all the known vulnerabilities to whatever device. That's where they report. Like a national vulnerability database.
And so this is why we get those updates. It's also very interesting, the iPhone, Apple makes it as highly secure. And so if you enter your password wrong 3 times, it shuts you down. And it used to be if you entered your password 10 times wrong in your iPad, it's shut down, like it's erased.
Right.
So these are very secure. And one of my software engineer patients told me that passwords can be too simple, or they can be so complex you forget. So it's a double-edged sword. And then, as the Apple iPhone demonstrates, you can shut yourself down because you forgot your password, you made it too hard for yourself, and then you're no longer able to access the iPhone or your smartphone. And so similarly, manufacturers, vendors, if you have a mobile insulin pump, a device, or some sort of device for infusion, device for giving you portable oxygen. There is a fine line to make it consumer accessible, user-friendly, and protect you. And so it's a problem.
Yes.
So I'm sure, as a millennial, many millennials feel that they're used to this. They're used to these passwords. And in big, large hospital systems, the millennial doctors can't deal with paper. So once it's shut down, they're really surprised.
Right.
Because they never
Had
to deal with paper. They never had to think of a backup. They thought, oh, the almighty system would work. So there are issues. Tell us a little bit about how you notice my generation and your generation.
Well, there is an interesting difference between the two. For one, my generation tends to have one password, one secure password that they feel confident in and use it for everything. I've noticed people of older generations tend to have very many passwords, but they have it in a document, a separate file, such as Excel, and just copy paste into whatever website they need to use it for. And in a way, that can also be a vulnerability, because if somebody is able to get into your computer, they can find that file and use it to access whatever website. On the other hand, my problem, which is I use 1Password for almost everything, once they have that 1Password, all my accounts are vulnerable.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues is an MD, PhD from Caltech, a radiologist. So he's very smart. And he says that he has 3 layers of password protection himself.
Nice.
Wow.
He has 1 layer in his smartphone, and if they break into it, he has encrypted it in a certain way, because he went to Caltech, so he's very good with numbers. So he flips numbers in a way. And the third layer, he updates it. So there's a systematic way you can, as a person, to encrypt your own thing and know how you're going to encrypt it. So you serially encrypt it, like you change the 7 into a 1, or the 7 means something. But the reason why the older generation like myself, we have to keep changing our passwords, like at a hospital, they make us change our password every 3 months. So, and every 3 months, and if we belong to more than one hospital, you're constantly changing passwords. And then if you're in a hurry and you type it in wrong 3 times, you're shut out. So you have to change it again. So it kind of behooves us for us to have an internal system where we delete one and replace it with the same number, so at least we're one step ahead of somebody who wants to block us out of getting into our patient base. But a true story is that when a new system is introduced, such as Epic, into a very large hospital system, or Athena Health, or one of the very big ones that cover all the hospitals in North America, they, for example, the Mayo Clinic shut the whole hospital down for 2 months. Nobody could leave. You couldn't leave to go to a conference. You had to get special permission. You had 2 solid months to learn Epic. Nobody was leaving because they didn't want to leave anything to chance. And part of it is that EHR is so powerful, we can't unlock the cabinet for all the cancer drugs, seizure drugs. You come into the ER, you can't get medications. And all the glitches happen in the first 2 weeks because you're introducing this huge change into 100,000 doctors. And for our home audience, what do you think would be the best way for us to encrypt our passwords, or how often should we do it?
Well, I think regular changing of passwords is a good practice. And with hospitals, they could use what industry uses, password generators.
Oh, password generators. I think that for Cisco and some of the very big companies, they require their employees to change it at least every month. Yeah. They actually tell them little memos.
Right, but 3 months is good.
Yeah, 3 months. For hospitals, it's 3 months. And I think that some people, like me, I forget my password. So sometimes I have to have a list of ways I creatively generate things that I remember. It's kind of interesting. So if your generation just uses one password, how does that work?
Very often there's this one word that you'll pick, and then you'll move around maybe a punctuation or change a number.
So that works.
Yes, but then the problem might be you forget what you changed, which happens to me quite often. So I have to go through the whole list of those past passwords that I remember. Eventually I get it, but...
That's interesting. Yeah, I never thought of that. I have also medical colleagues who besides the one who has the MD, PhD from Caltech, but other people, MDs in highly technical skilled fields like cardiology, they have an algorithm. They have one password, and it's long. It's like 10 characters, and they change the first one, then the second character, so that gets them through 10 months.
Wow.
Right? And then they reverse it, right? And then they do it again. So that gets to the second 10 months. So you can go that. And so it's very interesting how people think, because then you learn how you can think about whether you linearly do it. And some people do things with numbers, like they go through the square root, the square, the cube, and then they reverse it. And some people go through pi, 3.14, and they know all the numbers, and they reverse it. So it's very interesting. More about mobile devices. Recently, there have been hacks into oncology infusion pumps. And the portable oxygen tanks, which are created in California. And those were really cyber criminals who wanted money, who wanted to say, I'm going to stop your company's infusion pumps, pay us in cryptocurrency. So have you you as a professional, when they ask for your advice or pay for your services, have people already suffered or they didn't make it to the FDA? How do these vendors come to you?
Well, in my past life, we actually did audits on different government systems and vendors, making sure that they have the right minimum security requirements in place. Because it's about acceptable risk. What's your acceptable risk? And not just going out there preventing ransomware and doing encryptions and other things. It's a full encompassing, complete 360 when you're looking at security package. It's training your people, it's making sure you have the right configurations, it's making sure that the software has been vetted at some level, and it's also making sure your employees know about insider threats.
So it's important that rogue employees who might be mad, they work within a company, and they could be giving away the company store on the dark web for money because they're unhappy. So one has to be aware of that as well.
Yes.
And also for all the device companies that deal with this, they also are using their own personal system with the company system, to program that device. And so all employees who have access can pose a threat. They could decide to say, well, I'm mad and I'm going to fix my boss, hurt his third quarter earnings and make him look bad.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, and I'm going to quit right before, get my raise and leave. Yeah, so it's important to, as a IT person, I'm sure, to train your vendors that everybody has to be on board, that they have to, not only people who have access, who have legal access within the company, but they have to monitor these people.
Yes.
Look at Snowden.
Yes.
He had access, he had security, but nobody monitored him.
No one.
They just trusted him that he was going to be a nice person.
And do what he was hired to do.
And also the past CIA spies, they had access, and they decided to sell their secrets to rogue nations, and for whatever reason.
Whatever. Money, power, fame.
Did any of your vendors ever complain to you about their being told to pay out stuff in cryptocurrency?
Well, normal ransomwares, most of those bad actors do want to be paid in cryptocurrency or bitcoins because it's really hard to trace where the origin or the destination is.
So that's very interesting. We should all go look up cryptocurrency. Now, medical devices are of great interest because more than 1 million devices are sold a year. This includes insulin pumps, pacemakers, defibrillators, infusion pumps, and the insulin pumps are mobile and wearable, and people are walking around with them, and they're seemingly interspersed in the normal population. And as more of the population are diabetic, it becomes a problem. So people have to learn how to shut off the Bluetooth capability, you know.
Yeah.
And so do you have any of these insulin pump makers, do you have any of those as your vendors?
No, hope to have some, but currently we don't. One of the things, which, as you were talking about, is these interconnected devices or IoT devices. Even your Fitbit is an IoT device.
The Internet of Things, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Internet of Things. Your Apple Watch.
Yes.
Those are all sending information. Your heartbeat. Your heartbeat. Do you want everybody to know what your resting rate or your running rate is? Or
No.
is that important for any app that you have installed on there to know?
Not at all, no.
So, a lot
Maybe
of
she'll get 1 million hits and become a YouTube star with the, you have the best heart rate for all the applicants applying to medical school. No, but another one of my engineering patients told me, and he works with cybersecurity, he says the passwords for the Internet of Things and how the encoding is very poor for this generation. It's like if you have some device that talks to you at your house, Alexa, do this.
Right.
That, because they made it very accessible, it's very easily hacked. So people have to be very aware of that. you know, again, your password, make it complicated. So, in the last few minutes of our show, the take-home message, what do you think is our take-home message? Tell our home audience, what one thing you want them to remember?
Well, home audience, I want you to remember that not everything that you're given is securely packaged. So think about it as, what are the security mechanisms? Are you using default passwords? Is this something that's going to be able to get access by someone that is a threat actor?
So for our home audience, thank you for joining us.
No problem.
It's been a great show. Thank you, Keesha. Thank you, Laura. And I learned a lot, and I hope you learned something. And I think for all of us as patients, as consumers, as a doctor, I'm a doctor, and I could be a patient. I am a patient somewhere. All of us, the vendors, the people who are the professionals like Keesha, all of us have different hats. We could be a patient, we're relatives of patients. We care, we want medical devices to be good. We want it to be win-win. We don't want some hacker sitting in some dark web space saying we disabled every pacemaker there is in America, or we disabled every insulin pump. We're going to deliver bad doses to little girls out there with type 1 diabetes. So be careful, ask, be aware. Ask your manufacturer, ask your doctor. Thank you very much. And if you like this show, donate to KSAR TV, Saratoga Access TV. Thank you so much.